Hello everyone, I'm doing a video on my sump for my 40-gallon Reef. I just want to talk a little bit about the filtration that I have running this Reef. So to start, I have a 10-gallon aquarium that I've built into a sump. I originally had built this sump about 4 years ago for my 20-gallon Reef that I had set up for quite a while, and it did a really good job. I've had to move a few things around and make a little bit more room for a bigger return pump in this setup, and then also quite a bit more flow, probably double the flow than I had before. To start with filtration, I'm using a 200 micron filter sock. It's a 4-inch filter sock. I had originally built the shelf that's here to house a matte type filter, and it worked really good, and I used that for a little while, though it wasn't very cost effective because I was going through the filter mat pretty quickly. Every 3 to 4 days I was throwing it away and getting new ones, so I moved to a filter sock, and it's doing great. It's been working just fine, maybe even better than the other filter that I had. In the second chamber, I have the skimmer and also the return for my hang-on back refugium. The skimmer is a innovative marine DC skimmer. It works amazing. I empty the cup out every 4 to 5 days, just kind of depending on nutrients. Usually on the weekends I'll feed my coral, so there'll be a lot more nutrition in the setup. So I empty it a little quicker after the weekend, but on average 4 to 5 days. On the hang-on back refugium, which is something new, I never used this before. On the 20-gallon setup, I always had a little bit of chaeto and some dragon's tongue macroalgae growing in the sump. Never really been able to keep a lot of macroalgae in the setup before because it's always been a low nutrient setup, so macroalgae just don't grow that great. But I do plan on feeding more and also having more coral and more fish in this setup, so I got this hang-on back refugium to kind of help balance everything out. You can see in the back that I have some dragon's tongue thread macroalgae growing back here, and that's all I have back there for now. Eventually I will get some more chaeto, maybe some caulerpa in the future, once I start feeding more and getting more coral in there. For now I basically have the same bioload that I had before, so I'm not adding anything for a little while until my nutrients start to go up. For live rock, I basically have every rock that was in my 20-gallon setup is now in the sump. This big rock here, this one covered in GSP, and this one with the mushrooms, these were rocks that were in my 20-gallon display, but I made room down here. I had a baffle here and another baffle here that I had taken out just to make room for all these rocks. So I have the same amount of biological filtration in this setup to start, not counting the 3 huge rocks that I have in the display. So I have as much biological filtration as I can fit in the sump, within reason. You can see that I have a blue dotty back in the sump, and he's been living in the sump for about 3 years or so. I did have him in the display for a little while, but he was just way too mean, way too aggressive to any of the other fish in the tank, so I ended up moving him, and he's been in there ever since. He's been happy. He's been happy and healthy, and you can tell he's kind of got a fat belly on him. He eats pretty good in the sump, and he's been doing good. I also have an emerald crab in the sump. I did have him in the display as well, but he was trying to eat some of my expensive zoanthids, and I couldn't have that, so he has a new home down here where he can't eat anything that matters. So he's been down here for a little while, and he's doing just fine. I also have an orange hermit crab in here somewhere. Who knows where he is? I haven't seen him in a little while, but he's roaming around in there as well. And then in the refugium, I also have about 3 or 4 small 2.5-inch round rocks. Basically all my small live rock that I had went into the refugium for all of the macroalgae to grow onto. But otherwise the sump is just these rocks right here. Using actually my old return pump, which is just a cheapie that I've got like 4 years ago, and it's still running strong, still doing great. So that's it right there. That's my old return pump, and it's running about 180 or 200 gallons an hour or so through the refugium in the back. and then that drains over next to the skimmer, and you can see the flow that goes right into the rocks there. And then I have a 150 watt heater back there that kind of waterfalls right onto. I have a JBO 50 watt DC pump. That's my new return pump. I have the controller up here on the side. That I'm running about 300 gallons or so through. And then I also have a ball valve plumbed in, so I have it tuned perfectly so that my overflow isn't taking too much, and it's pretty dang silent. Every once in a while I'll get a bubble in it, but it's almost totally silent. Also with that, with the ball valve and the tuning, I've got the sump set up, and I've got the water level in the display tank set up so that if for some reason my display overflow gets plugged up somehow, the sump will go down to about this level, like right above the return pump, and it'll start sucking air, and then it's basically impossible after that for it to pump up any more water. And even if it does pump all the water in the sump down to that level, I still have about an inch in my display before the water can even overflow. So the display can handle almost this entire sump without overflowing onto the floor. Also, the pump will automatically turn off after just a few seconds of it running dry, so that's good. And then on the other side of that, if we have a power outage, or the pump also has a feed mode, if I hit the feed mode, the return can siphon down a couple gallons of water, which it only goes up to about this level here, so I can never have any water on the floor no matter what happens, which is great. It's kind of a good built-in safety feature. As far as heating goes, I have an Inkbird set up, and I'm running a 150 watt heater in the back. See it right in the back wall there. And then I also have a 50 watt heater, which you can see the little red light back there. So that's heating the water first, and that's also heating the water that comes out of the refugium. Then it goes through, and then it comes to the return pump over here. So the water in the display at the coldest is 77.3, and usually at the warmest it's 77.7. It's wintertime now, and the house gets down to around 63 to 64 at night. So it usually doesn't get any colder than that. Even if it does get a little colder, it will be fine. I got plenty of heating power. But I'm using the two heaters kind of for redundancy. I feel like the 50 watt heater is on a little bit more, and it kind of helps keep things going, and then at night the 150 water kicks on. It helps keep it warm overnight. But together they do a great job. No problem heating the tank. As far as top off, I don't have an auto top off yet. I do plan on getting one in the future, but for now I'm just using this handy little 1 gallon container. I've been using that same container for like 4 years now, and I get up and check the water level every morning like clockwork. It's the first thing I do before my eyes even open. You can see I have a piece of tape here. This water level, in the morning I'll fill it up to the top of the tape, and usually at night, which right now it's about 6 o'clock, so it's been about 10 hours or so since I filled it. You can see that's about how much evaporation I have, which is very little. And here shortly before I go to bed, I'll fill it up again to this level. The evaporation is so little that it's not even making a measurable amount of change in the salinity, and I keep it that way. I just check it every single morning. It never evaporates more. It's never been an issue. Someday I will get into ATO though. It's definitely in the plans, but for now everything's just simple, and I basically do everything, which is no big deal. I really enjoy being hands-on with my tank every day. Another thing is the refugium light. You can see I just have a cheap grow light for a freshwater setup. That light is actually from a small planted freshwater aquarium that I did have set up recently, but I ended up taking it down, so I used this light for the refugium. I did have a T8 grow light up there that went the whole length of the refugium. It actually worked out really good. The only bad thing was the PAR was way too much, and I could tell that the algae was starting to die off because of it. So after having it on there for about a week or week and a half or so, I decided to change it out and move to this LED, which is working great. So I'll probably leave that for quite some time. I do plan on getting some kind of an LED strip light to kind of go the length of the refugium in the future, but for now this is fine. Once I get more of a bio load in the tank and it becomes more necessary to get that macroalgae growing in there, then I'll kind of change things up. But as of now, it's doing just fine. That's basically the entire sump. That's basically the whole filtration. It's really simple, it's really cheap. There's really not a whole lot to it. It's super effective. Everything does really good. As far as sump maintenance, I haven't cleaned the sump since I set it up. That's usually something I do every 3 to 4 months in my 20-gallon Reef setup. I would usually take a couple of rocks out and I would stir up the sump and vacuum out any detritus buildup that's in the sump. So I do plan on doing that. I'll probably do that in the middle of winter, maybe February or March or something. I'll do that. So there's always some kind of maintenance on this. I do try to keep it as clean as possible, especially trying to keep it as low nutrient as possible. Try to really keep it hands-on and take really good care of the Reef. Also, I kind of view the sump as kind of a second display, even though it's not nearly as pretty as the display tank up top. I do have fish in here, you know, I have the crabs in here, and I do have a little bit of coral in here. So I try to take good care of it and make it look decent and kind of try to enjoy it as well as the display. But that's basically it for the entire sump setup. Super simple, super cheap. If you guys have any more questions, leave a comment. Like this video, definitely subscribe if you want to see more. I do plan on doing more videos on this setup. Definitely a lot more to come. Super excited about it. Hopefully I'll be doing some upgrades here in the near future to the plumbing and to the lighting that I have going down here. But until then, this is just going to keep doing its job. Thanks for watching.